Hello everyone, welcome back to another interactive tutorial review. In this video I'm going to review this table design. This is an incredible design. It's designed this complex looking table, nice design with relatively simplicity using SelfCAD's shape generator, Revolve tools and so on. Without further ado, let's get started and I'll explain you the step-by-steps and hopefully you will learn quite a lot from this tutorial. So to get started, we will start with, just a second till it loads, we will start with a basic cylinder, and actually the entire tutorial will be based on cylindrical design. So let me explain you the idea here. So the first thing is, actually before we start the design, we're going to load a reference image. So in this case also reference image, we haven't shown this much on previous tutorials. So the idea is you can load something. Usually when you load a reference image, you think about tracing it. So you want to have the image, you're going to trace it. And in this case, actually, it's going to be just for a reference. Sometimes you want to have just a view. I want to say just 1 second about the reference image. So when it loads, it opens up, you see the preview on the left side panel. I have seen people make the mistake to think they have to keep this open into view over here. This actually makes a lot of sense if you want to see it on the side, but unfortunately in SelfCAD that's not the best option. This panel is designed for tools that keep on opening and closing. It's a dynamic location. It's not good to keep anything stuck over here, and in some cases you wouldn't even be able to. Some tools may automatically close this or so on. So the idea here is that we want to have this image someplace in the grid. Now if you're going to trace it, you're basically going to make it, you're going to have maybe a darker image or bigger or whatever and kind of simply draw on it and trace it. In this case, you want to have just a view on it, so we're going to put it on a side. The way it works in interactive tutorials is you get an arrow, like a green color, that tells you where to position it. You don't see now the position where to place it, but once you click on it, it gives you this next position where to snap it. So I'm basically snapping it over here, and once it's snapped, I can close it. Now this is just for the designer's reference, so we'll take a look at it and to see how it's done. And we can use this in a moment, but the first thing, the designer is doing the tabletop. And the tabletop starts with a cylinder. And interestingly, if you're going to pay attention, the entire tutorial is based on cylindrical concepts. Meaning a cylindrical means not necessarily the shape that looks like a cylinder, but the fact is that it's created using rotation. So if you think about what a cylinder is, it's created something that it's rotated around, similar to the tool we're going to use soon, Revolve. So we keep that in mind, and I'm going to show you later in the Revolve and also shape generator, but everything will be done the same concept. So over here, we basically just setting the positions, position everything. I'll click next to automatically fill it in. We have shown this many times. And what we did over here is that we have a different top and bottom. That's the only thing that's interesting over here, that it's a little bit smaller, so it gives it like a bevel kind of effect over here, and we finalize it. So now we have a basic cylinder just thinned out and kind of beveled by making it shorter at the bottom. And we turn on the wireframe mode so we can see what's happening, actually see the face structure. And because it's a cylindrical type of rotating type of geometry, it creates the triangles on top. It actually creates quads over here on the side, but because we used only one segment, it's only one quad, otherwise you can make it more. But yeah, this is basically explained already in many tutorials before. So now we're going to go to scale. We're simply going to scale the x-axis to 350, and basically this gives it this kind of oval type of shape. And now we're going to add just a little bit of trim over here, whatever it's called. So in order to do that, we're going to select this bottom piece, section bottom polygon. So this has many faces, but it's one polygon. We select this polygon, and then we're going to use inset to add basically a distance to add some additional faces over here. So the first inset is going to be 5, which you already see it adds quads here around, but we want to add the second one. So we can click apply. So this is finalized. And now we're going to change the value to 2. So we want to have it less on the second time over here, and we finalize it. And then I have to just deselect. So what we've done over here, we added this section, this inside faces that are 2. The distance here is 5. So in order to be able to select and work with them, we have to go to face selection, and we're going to use the advanced selection so we can loop select them easily. Now in loop selection, what's happening here is I click on one face and then its neighboring face, and this only works once we have quads. And the good thing is that the inset tool actually creates quads. So that's how it insets. And now we're going simply to use the default extrusion setting, and we deselect it. So we finish actually with the top. So top is relatively easy. It uses, the only thing it uses over here is the inset extrusion, which is the tools we usually use in box modeling techniques, which we have many tutorials and I've explained many videos on this, how this works. And you can actually make the next design that we're going to make, the part of the legs, could be designed all using these techniques. And actually, in fact, the designer has shown me a design first using it that way. But if you're gonna make it this type of way, the design something like this, it will end up being like 400 or 500 steps. And here you can see we have the total everything 169 steps, because we're going to use now an incredible tool which is unique to SelfCAD called Shape Generator. Now, Shape Generator by itself is very similar to a cylinder by nature, meaning it's a cylindrical geometry. You have the same settings. You can set the radiuses, you can set amount of segments, you can set everything, but it adds more features. For example, you can bevel and some other additional features we'll see soon. But most importantly, it allows adding segments you can build out. So let's explain it as we move along. So you're going to set the radius over here to 24, and then I have over here a radius of 22, and then over here the number of edges, which is 8. So it makes it a little bit more rounded. It's already a little bit slopey, kind of short in the bottom. As you can see, it's 22 versus 24 at the top. And then the height would be just to 4. So it's a small segment, just to 4. So we have here like a small cylinder. Actually, it's quite similar to how we started the basic cylinder, just a little bit less. But here we're going to add over here, the height, I did something to, I made it somehow to 5 instead of 4. Okay, so nevertheless, we go to a bevel offset. So we have over here the idea we can bevel this. So right now this is still, as I said before, in the cylinder and made the top, it looks like beveled a little bit. The concept that the small is shorter, so it looks like this. But this is different. This bevel offset allows you to do something similar to the tool we have. It's called fillet, which kind of rounds it. It's a rounded bevel, and depending on the amount of edges, it's very similar to the fillet tool. So the offset over here is going to be a very small offset, 0.1. Very small offset, which you can see already it adds like a dent over here, and we add the no level. The level is only 1, so which adds only 1 edge. If you can add more, it's going to start becoming rounded, which again, it's very similar to fillet, to the functionality way fillet works. And then what we can do over here is a bevel weight. So you can change, by default, offset is in the center, it's 0. So basically the top and bottom sections are equally divided. And now we're going to add a weight of -1, which basically what it does is it moves it down so that the top part is actually bigger than this bottom part. So we are done with the first part. As you see, it's very similar, just added bevels over here. There's other things you can do, like twist and other things we can use later, hopefully all of the features, or at least most of them. But now where it becomes interesting is we move down to the option to add a segment. We simply click the plus button to add a segment. Now the segment by default will add the same setting as below, so it's kind of like a mirror image. Put the bottom onto the top. It goes from top to bottom, so the second segment's added on top and has the same settings over here, so you have to change your settings. The interesting thing is, like, you can technically build up shapes like this using the cylinder shapes and build up one cylinder, then position the next on top, next on top. Theoretically you can do it, but first of all, it will take a lot more time. You wouldn't have a lot of settings, it will take a lot more time also. But besides that, it wouldn't be connected. You would need a tool like Stitch and Scoop to connect them. The main advantage of this shape generator is that this actually connects them. They're already manifold connected. There's no other tools that need to be done. So you can build out really complex shapes using this tool, and you don't have to worry about later connecting them. They're all built out as a single shape. Okay, so with that said, let's basically customize this shape. So we're going to make it 26. So we're changing the top for bigger, and the bottom is also a little bit bigger, 25. And then we're going to move down to the height would be, let's say, just 1, so tiny section, and the bevel offset we make it to 0, so there's no offset over here. So now we get over here basically this section over here, and we're going to build segments. Okay, in the next segment we actually going to use something else. We're going to use a twist also. So I'm going to use the height would be 30, so this is a relatively big section. You can see over here this kind of starts moving it up, and then we're going to twist it to 22. So it already rotates it. And when you twist, you can see it starts making here this, like you twist the faces. As I said this before, this is already triangulated, it's already combined. And when you combine them, the way it happens if you twist, you end up making this non-manifold. There are some faces here that are overlapping now because you twist them. So what we're going to do now is the position offset. This is only available when you have more than one segment, and this offsets basically the position between two segments. So we're going to offset it by 2, and this actually gives us this nice look. So it's twisted, but look at this nice kind of triangular type of style over here, diamond type of shape, whatever shape it is, and this gives us based on the twist. So now what we're going to do over here, we're going to add another segment, and the other segment basically would be the height 1, twist 0. So let me just do next. And you can see this is a twist 0, but it looks twisted because without a twist, it's basically back to the original position. So the way this works is that everything has its like starting orientation, the way it's designed. If you twist it, this is kind of on offset. If you make the next one to be 0, no twist, it goes back to the original orientation, which relative to the twisted piece that it was done before, this is considered now twisted because this is 0 position, the bottom one is 0, and the center is twisted. That's basically the way it works. So we get the same twisting effect when we set it as a 0. Okay, so now we're going to add another segment, and this is going to set height and bevel height, so a bevel weight also. Same thing we have done before already, so I'm just going to click next. But over here it added more segments. If you see the bevel level, actually this is something we had before, the detail. What the original was 4 in the beginning over here, so it added only like 2 segments. Here we added more 4, so it's basically rounded that. And now I'm going to add another segment, and again we're going to play with the level and with the weight as well, similar to what we done the bottom piece before. We add a new segment, and again basically the same thing repeating over and over. Adding a new segment, and we are basically again playing with these settings, as you can see, which starts now. It's a negative bevel. As you can see, bevel can have a positive and negative. The bevel offset now is negative 0.2, so, and it also has 3 segments, the level. So in this case it added this kind of a curve in instead of out. In this case it was a positive over here, it's outside, and this is negative, so it goes inside. Now we're adding a new segment, and in this case we have the same thing, height and level, weight. So you can see we keep on playing the same settings over and over. Radius, so click next, and then another, we're not done yet, another segment, and you click next to see this starts building up, and then another, and the same. Now we're going to twist again, so we're going to add there a new twist and offset, so you can see we kind of create the same thing. And then now what we're going to do here is finally, this is now positioned onto the floor. So this is actually quite important. We start everything from the bottom of the floor, that's the default, and then we start building up. Everything is connected to each other. The only thing that can make a distance between they're triangulated. If you make an offset between shapes, they will basically stretch between them, and then if you twist the way it was used now, it looks like this. If there are different type of shapes, the offset can have some other offset smoothness. This is something we haven't used yet. The only thing I think we didn't use, the offset smoothness. This is something, a difference between. So for example, if the bottom shape is a rectangle, only 4 edges, and the top is, let's say, cylinder with a lot of edges, and you offset them, there will be kind of a transitioning effect. So this transitioning you see over here is basically mostly because of the twist, not because of the differences in the edges, because they have a very similar edge count. But if they do have a different edge count, one is rounded, one rectangular, so on, you can play with the smoothness, which will actually look similar to this. It will interpolate the distance between them. So this is the only thing that hasn't been shown over here. But what we're going to do now here is finally, the final step, we're going to move up this entire thing to actually touch the top of the table. So it's just going to move up the Y to 24. And in this case, it moves it from the bottom up. So actually, it's not Y to 24. I'm not sure actually why this is not happy when I 24. Let's see, enter. Okay, I didn't click enter, I guess. Okay, so this just moves it up a little bit from the bottom. Actually, it may not be touching over here, and I will see soon. I don't remember. I think this is just so we can build out the other pieces from the leg. So it needs to be lifted up from the floor. But this move up is not between what I started saying before. This is not between segments. This is just the position, the basic shape, and this is very similar to what we have in all of these shape generators, where you can position the basic shape. And now we're finalizing it. We're done with this piece. Now you can see this is actually quite a nice, relatively nice shape that was done using just the shape generator. Now, as I said before, there's many other ways to do it. You could have done it using box modeling techniques. There's actually the Revolve tool. We could have done it. We're going to use it soon. But from a beginner perspective, the way you look at this, now I focused mostly on the shape generator because I followed this tutorial. But from a designer's perspective, we totally forget about it. We uploaded this reference image, and the designer, the way it's done is looks at the reference image every time you add a segment and try to make it look similar and see what's needed to be done in order to make it look similar. So from this perspective, to build out shapes from the bottom up, this is probably the easiest way, and definitely took relatively little steps, very few steps to make it work. So now we're going to simply isolate them. The two places you can isolate them. You can isolate them from the view menu, click isolate, or from the menu over here in the object panel and click isolate. So once we isolate this, meaning is we hide everything else. And now we're going to go and start building out, finishing the leg process. So we're going to go 3D sketch, and over here we're going to set a side plane. So we're actually going to leave the bottom plane. We're going to end up having here two planes. You see over here the bottom, top, and back, and we're going to start drawing over here. We type in the value of 54. Actually not here, the 54. Okay, so this is basically setting the position where we start drawing, and we click on this and then click over here. So the benefit, you have two planes over here, we need to have something to intersect. We can draw on an object depending on the snapping options, what you set over here, but over here the idea here is we're going to use the planes to draw, and if we draw over here, we can draw this plane is in the center of the object because the object was positioned automatically in the center of the scene, and now we only changed the height, but we didn't change the position on the other side, x and y, x and z. So we draw in the center, the plane is also in the center, we haven't changed it, and now we're going to use the other plane, I think, to draw over here. So let's see, we're going to go now to an arc, and let's see, we click over here, and then we click over here, let's see, over here, and over here, over here, and over here, and let's see, now we're setting it 0.2, then click again and again. Okay, so we basically entered over here, we're going to type in the value here 0, and now we're using it, drawing it until the floor. So now you can see we actually intersect here the floor. The bottom was snapped to the floor, I think, the bottom grid. I think so, actually. I have to look closer to it. I think so, it was snapped in the bottom grid. But now what we can go back is to align, and we're going to finalize it here, is clicking here, and then typing in the value 0, and clicking here. So yes, here we snap on the floor. We actually draw on the bottom plane now over here, and now we go back to the arc, and we click here and here and here, basically to make this arc, and back here to close it. So we close this shape. So now we have a closed shape, and that's it. We're done with the drawing. So basically all we did is we draw in this piece, mostly using the side plane and a little bit here snapping to the floor plane, and we drew this basic shape. And as I said in the beginning of the video, that we're going to use everything here is cylindrical type of thing. So initially we started with a basic cylinder, then we used kind of a custom base cylinder we call shape generator, and now we have here a very custom drawing, but we're going to do the same thing, a rotation type of shape, which is called revolve. Now if you revolve this, revolves around different segments, around an axis. So the default axis is what's shown over here, this axis, and if you revolve around it, you can kind of get this shape. You can see this, it traces this shape around revolved. So how are we going to make this work? So it's actually quite interesting. So what we're going to do over here is first we're going to set the angle to just 6. So if you make it to just 6, then you get just a piece of it. But now we want to do this is actually quite interesting to understand. So let me spend a minute to explain it. So Revolve needs an axis, as I said. If you're going to, like, sadly I can't show this in middle tutorial, it's blocked, but if you're going to move this axis, it's going to change the entire shape. Now there's two ways to set an axis. You can use the default, what SelfCAD calculates. It basically finds its own axis, a straight line, and then it gives you these gizmos that you can move it and play and make the shape look different. Or you can use a custom axis, which is revolve around edge. If you click on this, then you have an option to choose an edge or draw an edge where it should revolve. Now this axis is actually quite similar to this axis that we have over here, this line over here, this straight line. It's actually quite similar. So technically you could have chosen this line, I think, if it's straight. If not, you may have straightened it out or whatever, but it's the same thing. But what's interesting here is that Revolve is a rotational movement, as I said, and naturally, whenever you rotate around an axis, the inside part of the rotation is always shorter than the outside part. And this is what we use over here to our advantage. So if you want to have a shape like this, and it should be symmetrical, complete the same thickness that you have in the front and same thickness in the back, then you simply use this drawn shape that we have and you extrude it. You can extrude it. You can either extrude or use fill polygon and then add thickness, whichever way we have to add a symmetrical type of shape that it's flat on both sides. I mean, not flat, it's 3D, but it's basically symmetrically the same thickness throughout the entire shape. But if we use this revolve effect, what's happening is the axis here makes it that it's thicker over here, and the closer you go to the axis that we use, it becomes thinner and thinner. If you would have shown this, actually tested this before without the tutorial, if you would move this gizmos over here to an angle that it goes to this axis, an angle to the length of the leg, then what will happen here is that the thicker would be this section would be symmetrically thickness, and thin would be over here, the bottom part, because the axis would be this side. So now with that said, what we end up having over here is the fact that we have here, it's rounded to one side, it's thinner over here, but also it's rounded just to one side. So we have it over here one side. So we know that this is like rounded over here, but the other side not. So it's not symmetrically looking from two parts. First of all, it's thinner over here, and second thing is it's rounded just to the right side in this case, and we need to fill on the left side as well. So what we're going to do over here is we're going to remove one fill. So we're going to set the fill start to false. So now it's actually open over here. This side is opened, and we're going to click finalize. So as you can see over here, it's hard to see, but it's filled from this side, completely closed. But over here, it's opened. It's not manifold. And what we're going to do here is we're going to repeat the same process, just a mirror image kind of. So we're going to go revolve again, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to set it to 6, the same value as before. We still use the default axis to rotate. We don't have to change it. But now we're going to make again the same fill start to false. So right now it's still the same thing, but to make this work, we're going to go to flip orientation. So this basically means that it rotates now from the other side around. The problem here is if you rotate the other side around, this is now flip normal. So you can see from the color over here, the normals actually flipped. So we're going to also check the flip normals. So now we have these two sections done. So what we have done is we have done this in two pieces, in two parts, and one rotates to this side, one to this side, and it's thick in the bottom and thinner over here because we've used the axis closest to this section over here. And now what we're going to do over here is we're going to select this mesh, both of these meshes, and we're simply going to merge them together. So I'm going to click Control M. You can either choose it from here or Control M. I'm going to click Control M, and it's merged. As it's merged, you see it removes 92 vertices because we didn't need to remove any faces because we actually chose not to fill the start, so there was no faces on the inside part from either of these revolved sections. And now we merge them, we just have to remove duplicate vertices and we get something nice. Now this line you see over here is just the profile is still here, so we're going to click over here, isolate again, and now you can see we remove the line, we got only this. So now in order to stitch them together, we still need to combine them together into this shape. So what we're going to do over here, we have an interesting problem. So, and this is actually a problem that happens a lot, and this is back to kind of box modeling techniques. So here to finalize, we have to use this tool. So we want to add here a section over here that we can kind of play with these faces, but these faces are very small, very close to each other. So anything you're going to do over here, if you're going to inset this, we'll start making faces intersect to each other. So what we can do over here is we're going to clean this up. So we're going to select these vertices over here. Okay, so I'm selecting these vertices. And now what we're going to do, okay, still have something not selected, so let me just click again. Okay, so I selected all of these vertices, as you can see, all of these vertices, and I'm going to go to the snap tool. Now I can snap them to here, we'll just move it, but that's not what we want. We want them to be combined. So we're going to go here is, we're going to go to selection collapse vertices. And if we click collapse vertices, and then I click over here, this is basically what moved them all together, okay? And now I have to basically deselect it. I click in the grid, simply deselect these vertices, and now I'm going to go to do the same in the bottom. So we're going to select all of the bottom vertices and snap and collapse vertices, and collapse them to the center point. Okay, so now we deselect them, and now what we can do here is these all vertices are collapsed, but they still exist over here. So we need to remove the duplicates. So we're going to go to Geometry, Clean, and the option Remove Duplicates, and click Finalize, and you can see we removed 30 polygons, 13 faces. Here we had to remove faces as well, because these small, they were actually faces. So it removed, I guess, 15 on each side, so it's 30 in total. From top and bottom, I guess it's the same, yeah, same vertices and faces over here. So it removed everything. And now what we can do here is what we wanted to do to begin with. We select these polygons, and we're going to go to Inset. I just want to show you here is, by the way, that I clicked on polygon and I selected each one separately. You can see even now when I hover, they're not the same, because as I said before, they are not symmetrical, they are a rounded shape. So it's smaller over here, but it's also rotated. They're not flat. If I want them to select actually flat, I would have to go to Advanced Settings and switch the tolerance a little bit on higher, so it's flat, because it's not flat because this shape is created a rounded way, so they're a little bit offset, the faces between each other, and that's exactly the shape we wanted to create over here. But what you're going to do over here is we're going to inset this, and we're going to make it 0.5. So this is the inset, and this is what we couldn't do. Why we had to do this? Because we couldn't make this inset while we still had these faces, because they will start overlapping. As you can see, we need more space. So this is what the collapsed vertices helped us, and remove duplicates helped us to basically get this new structure over here. Now what we're going to do is we're simply going to extrude them and finalize, and now we can go back to this shape. We're clicking here, we selected the shape. I have to click to deselect the inside faces over here and this part over here, and now we're going to go is to copy offset. So what we have over here is we have one piece over here, just one leg section, this section, and now here's another interesting thing, which is going to use again a revolved type of section. Now it's not revolve, we want to have additional copies, so we can simply go and copy and move them, rotate them, but that's quite complicated. So we need to have something that automatically revolves around a cylindrical part, because this is a cylindrical type of shape, it's rounded, so we can use the tool. So we're going to go to copy offset, and we're going to use here the pivot option. So you could think about the pivot option, you could think about it, this is more like similar to revolve, just making copies. Now the problem here is we actually need only 2 copies. The design only needs 2 copies, but this goes equally divide the shapes around the section. So if we're going to make 2 copies, it actually understands that I already have 1. So if I choose for example 3 copies, it's the same as choosing 4 copies, because it takes the one section I already have, and then it divides the other 3 copies equally around. So if I want this to be designed equally around, I want to have a shape of a leg over here and on the other side over here, but I don't want to have it to the inside. You see later why you don't want to have it to the inside. So normally you would think I have to make only 2 copies, but then it's going to understand that the total is only 3, and then it will divide them, not position them correctly. So in order to make this work, we have to choose 3 copies, and I click copy. So you can see it positioned them nicely where I need it all to position. The only downside is that I get an extra leg in the inside. So what we're going to do here is we're simply going to deselect this first of all, and we're going to group them together. We're going to click Ctrl G, so we have this. And now what we're going to do here is we're going to deselect, let's see, we're going to select this one, okay, and we are going to isolate this. Okay, so we remove that. I mean, it's not deleted yet, just isolated, removed from view. So this is basically what we wanted to have over here. Okay, so now we can deselect this group, and we're going to work on this one. So we're going to turn on the face mode, and we're going to select this face and inset, and this is back again to like kind of box modeling techniques, where we're just going to use a little bit face extrusion, inset, and these type of stuff to basically do this. So we make apply 1 section, then we make it to 5, a smaller section, and then we add over here more advanced settings, and this type of stuff I've shown in previous tutorials quite a lot. We add the scale over here in Y to -2, so it's going to make it shorter. We add another option in Y to -1, and we click apply. So we have over here, you can see it basically moved it down here, and then moved down a little bit less, and now we're adding again a 15, and we click apply, so we get the next section. Now we add another scale effect and y to +2, so we add the 2, another option, and y to 1, so it's kind of like an inverse of what we did before, so it moves it back up. So we moved it down here and then back up, and then we extrude 1.4, okay, and we finalize it. So what we have done over here is we basically created this section over here, and now we're going to simply click delete. You can click delete from here or simply the delete button, and we're going to delete this. It shows the image that can delete everything because we just don't take a snapshot from the face, but it's actually going to delete just the face that we had selected. So deleted this face over here. Now we turn on the selection mode and we go to we select these shapes over here, and we're going to mirror them. So we select this entire section, this center point plus this group, which is the 3 pieces over here that we need, and we're simply going to mirror, click a copy, and we're going to set the copy to the left side. So now we got this, we finalize it, and as you can imagine, what we need to do now, we need to select both sections over here. Let's see, deselect this. Okay, so we have this entire thing, and we need to simply merge them, Control M, and it removed 2 vertices over here. I'm actually concerned why only 2. I think this actually, we have to click to remove duplicates to remove more. Sometimes if it's not 100% straight, it wouldn't remove everything. I would expect to remove at least 4 vertices, but let's see how we're going to do it later. But now you turn on this, let's see, we're going to move it. Let's see what it's asking me here. Click on group 1 to select it, and this one, and it's going to set to 0. It's going to simply center it. Okay, so everything is centered over here, and now we click over here, it's done. So the only thing actually I think that it's needed over here, this is actually done fine, but I think actually that it didn't remove all the vertices. So I'm going to try here, let's see, geometry clean. I have too many shapes selected, so I have to select this, only this one. Geometry clean works just on one shape selected, so I select this and I go remove duplicates, and actually there's nothing here. Okay, so something must be wrong here. Actually, I'm going to test this. Somehow I was expecting to, okay, I see why. You can see actually this was not flat, so this actually doesn't touch. You can see there's a gap over here. So this actually is not done correctly. There's a gap here because the shape was bended. This shape was bended. So the way you should have done this to solve this thing, when we selected these faces, we actually were supposed to flatten them and then move them out. But now, in hindsight, what we need to do, we actually need to select these vertices and we need to basically collapse them. So I go to snap again, and I go to collapse vertices, and I'm going to collapse them onto the center like this, and then I need to do the same thing on the top over here. So we're going to select these vertices over here, and we're going to collapse them, collapse vertices, and collapsing them in the center. Oops, I didn't put it in center. I can move it later, it's not a big deal. But if you need to move this to make it flat a little bit, you can just move it, or yeah, just kind of position them. This is not flat, so I can position it. I'll show you in a minute how to do it. So now what we're going to do here is we're going to simply go to geometry clean, and we're going to remove the duplicates, and now you can see to remove the 2 additional vertices. So this was kind of at an angle, so the backside vertices were removed to begin with. They were snapped together, but because it was at an angle, this section actually didn't touch and didn't move. So now in order to actually flatten this back, if you care about it, it should be flat. I'm just gonna select these 3 edges. You're gonna go to the flatten tool, and you can see over here it has a 0.6 offset, a tiny offset. I'll make it a 0, and now this is flat. So this is basically back to the center. This is all done. So now what I want to show you here, the tutorial is done, but actually what happened over here is if we're going to, let's see, let me close this. If you're going to isolate just this shape, oops, let me exit this setting mode, and I'm going to isolate this. You can see this has no cut in now. So what I'm going to do here is I select this shape, and I'll select this group and this group, and I'm going to use stitch and scoop. difference. So I'm going to keep the original shapes. I want to keep these legs. I just want them to cut into the shape so I can use it to print them separately. And I want to remove these, remove the group one, the other group, something like this. So you can see now what we get over here. We got a cut in to the shape. And now we're going to finalize it. And if I'm going to isolate now this shape, you'll see this actually has a cut into it, which matches the same that we have with the group, with the output from here. If you're going to let's see, isolate this one, so you can now print them separately, and then you can assemble it, push this inside, and then glue them together, and basically you'll have what you want. The only thing, that's left here is this shape. This piece actually needs to be deleted. This is what we did, the pivot, an extra shape. So I have to keep, all we have to do is this one, and show this one. So this is now the complete thing. And then we have also the top. So that's basically it. Okay, I hope you learned something new. And we can position this also over here to snap it down. It doesn't matter, it's just going to be printed as separate pieces and then connecting them. In reality, we could have done this also as a separate piece to connect them. So you can subdivide this as a separate piece and then make it to go in the same as a leg, so you can actually print everything separately and then connect them. But yeah, this is mostly just for visual and teaching you tools. But for final production, I guess it could have some improvements, minor improvements. That's it for now, and hope to see you again my next tutorial. And please let me know in the comments if you want me to show anything else, or if you have any questions, suggestions. And thanks for watching. Until next time, bye.